What do you tell your team when you're in the last week of the season, you're facing the team that's 0-11? I know the consistent message is one game at a time. You got to be ready every week, but there's an awful lot of evidence in this particular case that your opponent has really struggled all season long.
You know, last time we played them there, we lost to them. They took us out of a chance to get to the conference championship game. They went, and you know, obviously, we struggled playing there on that day. They played very well. They'll work at playing very well against us. And last game of the year, what we tell our guys is that you know, this is the opportunity to get ourselves at 500 and to not have a losing season. If we get a chance to get to a bowl game, we're going to work at winning that and try to get ourselves to a winning season. And so a lot of things out there for us in terms of striving to get this win.
What have your last few days been like, Frank, after getting the record on Tuesday night? What, you know, in general terms, how many people around the country have reached out to you? What you describe what the last couple of days have been like from your perspective?
Yeah, you know, really a tremendous number of people have reached out, texted me, emailing. It's been you know, certainly much more than I expected along those lines, and you know, just I've got to get to answering those, and you know, and certainly a lot of people showed their, I guess, appreciation for what our program has been able to do, and with that in mind, that's, you know, that obviously makes you feel good, and but you know, there's work ahead, and so that has kind of come and gone, and now it's time to get back to work.
So no one completely blew your socks off that you hadn't heard from in 15 years, and they saw you on TV the other night and tried to get in touch with you out of the blue or anything like that?
Yeah, you know, I've had some players from Holy Name High School, from Southeast High School. You know, obviously, throughout my coaching career, some former players have reached out. Coaches have reached out. You know, an example would be Pat Fitzgerald sent a picture of me signed by all of his coaches, congratulating us on the 111th win, and so just, you know, things like that you don't truly expect necessarily. Bob Stoops, I mean, you know, just some guys that have are very well-respected coaches, as well as former players have reached out, and really people that I know. So that's all been great. And again, you know, those have all got to get answered.
Did it,
Coach Osborne, you know, I don't want to leave him out as a guy that has reached out.
Did it mean a little something to have Jimmy there? I know you guys had kind of worked out this ahead of time, but to have him there on that particular evening?
Yeah, I thought it was great to have him there. He's been a big part of it. He and Tim Albin, you know, obviously came with me at the beginning. Jimmy with us up until this season, and Tim still with us and collecting those wins, and so you know, having Jimmy there was important. It was meaningful. But he's also reached out and been at other games when it certainly hasn't conflicted with his travels down south.
Coach, shifting focus to Akron again, I mean, what did Akron do, or maybe what did Miami not do in that last game that was just 20-17?
Well, it was, I think, a well-played, hard-fought football game. You know, you look at Cato and his ability to escape and create plays. I think that showed in that game. You know, I think their offensive line has continued to improve as the season has gone on, and so, you know, it wasn't a deal where Miami just shut them down, and Miami's capable of doing that to a lot of teams. And You know, defensively, they're one of the top teams in our conference defensively. I think they're ranked 4th in total defense in just MAC games, and so it, you know, tells you a little bit about their ability on the defensive end of it. And they, you know, their kickoff coverage. You start to dig into their special teams, and you see they're capable of winning games with special teams. So you know, it's going to be a hard-fought football game, and obviously we're going to have to be at our very best.
Well, the passing defense is #1 in the conference
Yeah.
too. I mean, what sticks out about them, and what have they kind of been able to build there?
Well, you know, they're able to do quite a bit on the defensive side of it, and in terms of their looks and blitzes and the different coverages that they use, you know, and so they'll come up with a couple things that, you know, that they'll really zero in on our game, probably that we haven't been able to see very much of and practice very much of, and their coaching staff, I think, has done a great job in terms of getting their team prepared to play ball.
Tom Arth has yet to win a game as MAC head coach. You've won more games than any other head coach in this conference's history. What would you tell a guy in his position kind of struggling through the first year on the job somewhere?
You know, there's hardly a coach out there that hasn't struggled as a head coach. Certainly when you take over a new program, sometimes even when the program's been successful, you know, just getting all the pieces of the puzzle put together sometimes will take some time. And he's a really good coach. He's got a really good staff. It's going to work for them.
Will you have the same backup quarterback in place this week? Is Curtis going to be your number 2?
No. Joe will be number 2. Curtis has had surgery here yesterday, and it was a planned surgery. We knew that it was coming, not too unsimilar to what Nathan's surgery was all about, and so you know, he'll be lost for the rest of the season. Joe will be the backup quarterback. You know, he and Nathan have really kind of switched on and off with that as we've gone through the season. So, and Joe, like Nathan, got some snaps in this last ball game, although, you know, we weren't throwing the ball at all. So they were, you know, every snap's meaningful, but they were handing the ball off, or in a couple cases they kept it and ran with it, you know. So so not a lot of experience, but neither Nathan nor Joe have a ton of experience, but they've got a great deal of potential, and so you know, we hope that that Joe doesn't get too much playing time in this last ball game. You know, Nathan's been great for our program. He's been very durable, and so we're in the situation that we're in.
Just so I'm clear, this wasn't like Curtis banged a shoulder up Tuesday night in BG. This was a pre-existing issue that you guys had scheduled this surgery for at some point.
Yeah. It has to get done, and you know, he hasn't been taking any hits in practice, as our quarterbacks don't, and you know, he's getting a few in this. He got a few in this past game, and it just made sense not to put him out there to where he could worsen that injury. And you know, there'll be some bright spots to this, in that you know, getting the surgery now will, you know, allow him to come back a little sooner. He'll probably be able to do some throwing in spring ball. It's his non-throwing shoulder, do some throwing in spring ball, and which is good, you know, which will be a plus. So there's some negatives to it. There's some positives to it.
You mentioned this Tuesday night, the turnovers. Is there anything, after looking at the film, you can you could point to and say, well, we did this better, this is why we finally had turnovers, or is it football luck, so to speak, why it happened?
Yeah, we were tackling fairly good, although we missed some tackles, obviously, in the game. But, the physicalness of the game and the fact that we were going into contact, I think, always gives you a chance at the possibility of creating turnovers. And then we have the one interception towards the end. Sometimes they come in bunches. Sometimes you have a drought. So we're hoping that the bunches continue.